Hello again. Everyone loves fire. There's nothing like sitting next to a cozy fire on a frosty winter's day. But drying firewood takes ages and uses lots of space. What if you didn't have to dry firewood at all? Sometimes the answer is you don't. This is burning freshly felled wet wood. So how do you do it? The secret starts from an old British poem. Come take a walk with me. There is a famous poem called the Firewood Poem. It's about 100 years old, and it says you can burn some firewood wet. The last stanza goes like this. Poplar gives a bitter smoke, fills your eyes and makes you choke. Applewood will scent your room. Pearwood smells like flowers in bloom. Oaken logs, if dry and old, keep away the winter's cold. But ash wet or ash dry, a king shall warm his slippers by. Now this poem by Lady Celia Congreve has convinced an awful lot of us that you can burn ash wood, like this tree, whether it's fresh green wood or properly dried firewood, as though it makes no difference at all. So we're going to put Lady Celia Congreve's theory to the test. We have this tree, it's an ash tree, Fraxinus excelsior. It's had the sad misfortune of contracting ash dieback disease. It's a real problem with ash trees in Britain. It gets into the branches and works its way down the trunk and kills the tree. Now, it was dropping branches onto our rather glamorous barn over there. It doesn't need any help in that regard. So we're going to cut this tree up. We're going to use it to heat our home, but it also gives us an opportunity to put her theory to the test. Freshly cut wood is usually called green, and the reason is because the inner bark is green. It's quite a thin layer, but you can see little slivers of it just there. Ash bark is quite thin. Now over time, as the tree dries, the inner bark goes brown. So to put Lady Celia Congreve's theory to the test, we're going to do a side-by-side comparison. We're going to burn some of this green ash next to some properly dry ash and see, do they burn equally well? So this is the green ash we just cut into rounds. We're going to compare it to some properly dry ash we have at the back of this woodshed. It's been there for 2 years now. It came from these two ash trees we had monolith 2 winters ago. Let's go grab some of that. Right, so now we need to cut this green ash. We're going to make it the same size as our dry ash to make the test as fair as possible. So let's go do this experiment. So here's our 2 lots of firewood. This is the green wood that we just split, and this is the dry wood that's been in our woodshed for a couple of years. We're going to build our fires there and see how they compare. We're going to build these 2 fires in a teepee style. It helps ensure good drafts, they get burning more easily. Now I put a couple of logs flat on the ground because it's snowy and frozen. This will help insulate the fire from the cold so it gets going more quickly. We're going to build these 2 fires as similar as possible to make this a fair test. So I've just now lit both fires. Let's give it a few minutes to get going and see what happens. After about 15 minutes or so, this dry ash fire is burning beautifully. There's hardly any smoke, just heat waves giving off fantastic heat. You can see it's melted all the snow around it. That's what you want. This wet ash fire, on the other hand, is kind of smoldering. I think it's going out. Let's give it some encouragement. Right, that seems to have helped. Hopefully, it'll get going now. To understand what's going on, we need to know a very important fact about wood: water. All wood contains water. Some living trees, in fact, can contain quite a lot. Poplar trees like this one can be up to 2/3 water by weight. It's quite remarkable. But the useful thing for us is that not all trees contain the same amount of water. Have a look at this chart. It shows some common UK species and their water content when they're freshly cut wood. There's really quite a remarkable difference between them. Let's go back and have a look at that green ash that we're burning and see what its moisture content is. This green ash wood is measuring at 32% moisture content. And that's why you can, after 2 hours of effort, get it to burn. So what is moisture content and why is it such a big deal? Well, moisture content refers to the percentage of water you have in your firewood. This dry firewood is measuring at 19%. That's what makes it really good firewood. Now here's the important thing. All the water in your firewood has to get boiled off before the wood will burn. After all, water doesn't burn. Now the energy to do that comes from the fire itself. Now that's what was happening with our green ash fire earlier. That smouldery, smoky stage was actually the drying stage, and as soon as the wood is dry, it burns. Now the trouble is that the higher the moisture content is, the longer that takes and the less heat there is for you to keep warm. Is that cute? You deserve a treat. Okay, let's put some numbers on this. Let's say you had a ton, 1,000 kilograms of dry ash firewood. Now this stack here is willow, but if it was dry ash, this would be about 2/3 of a ton. It's a cubic meter. So if you had a ton of dry ash firewood measuring at 19% moisture content, like the ash we had earlier, that means you have 190 kilograms or 420 pounds of water. Boiling off that amount of water will use 137 kilowatt hours of heat. That's more energy than it takes to heat the average British home for more than 4 days. But if you're burning wet ash, measuring at 32% moisture content like we had earlier, that's nearly 70% higher than the dry ash. That's an extra 3 days of wasted heat, or 6,000 cups of tea just to boil off all that extra water. That's a lot of tea. It's even worse with a wetter wood like beech. Beech trees can be 60% moisture content compared to 32% for the green ash. That means that by weight, beech trees are more water than they are wood. So the next time you stood next to a beautiful beech tree like this one, you're actually stood next to a standing column of water disguised as a tree. So green ash burns because its moisture content is so low. There's more wood than there is water. But any wood that has a moisture content of more than about 50% just won't sustain a flame. It's like trying to burn a wet towel. Now, ash isn't the only tree that will burn green. Black locust and birch trees like this one are also very dry when they're wet and will burn green. It'll be a smoky, smoldery kind of fire. As the water boils off, the moisture content gets low enough for it to burn properly, but in a pinch it can be made to work. So if you're in the woods and you need a fire, knowing the right tree to burn can literally be a lifesaver. That's good to know. So if you've tried to burn any of these trees green, let us know how you got on in the comments below. So that's burning wet wood outside, but what if you wanted to burn green wood inside in an open fire or a wood burning stove? I mean, apart from a bit of heat loss, surely it's not a problem. I mean, it's just harmless water, right? Come on in. Well, yes, but very much no. If you burn wood that has too high of a moisture content in it, you're going to have two big problems, and they're interrelated: smoke and creosote. The smoke causes the creosote, and the creosote is a major safety issue. In order for a wood burning stove to burn efficiently, it needs to be about 600 degrees Celsius, that's 1100 degrees Fahrenheit. And if you have too much water in your wood, it's a bit like spraying a hose pipe on your fire. It cools it down and it won't burn efficiently. You just get loads of smoke. Now, the color of the smoke from your fire can actually tell you an awful lot about how efficiently it's burning. Now, all wood fires make white smoke to begin with. We saw that with both of our fires earlier, even the properly dry firewood. That's water boiling off and then condensing in the air. But it can also contain unburnt gases and particulates, and these can be a real problem. But once your fire is burning well, and if you're burning properly dry firewood, that white smoke will disappear. Now, if you're burning partly dry firewood that isn't properly dry, you can wind up with black smoke. This is a sign of incomplete combustion. The water content in the wood is high enough to stop the temperatures getting high enough to burn all those particulates. Those particulates are actually wasted fuel, and you don't want that. It can also happen in a wood burning stove if you don't have enough oxygen. The goal is clear smoke, no smoke, just heat waves like we saw earlier. When we first started burning firewood in a stove at home, I became obsessed with going outside and looking up to check the color of smoke coming from our chimney. I even suggested to my wife, Emma, that we put a webcam on the roof pointed at the chimney so we could keep a constant watch on the color of the smoke. She said no. Now, the main problem with burning wet wood in your home is creosote. If you're burning wet wood, all that water, the particulates, and lots of the gases can condense and collect on the inside of your chimney. Now, all fires create some creosote, but the more often you burn wet wood, the more creosote you'll get and the more tar-like it will become. And because it is unburnt wood, it can catch fire. It is the main cause of chimney fires. You certainly don't want that. And of course there's air quality to consider. Burning green wood releases all those unburnt gases and particulates into the air. Nobody wants to breathe that. On the other hand, properly dry wood burning in a hot fire has almost no impact on air quality. And of course, it smells wonderful. I mentioned earlier that this tree has ash dieback disease. It's a fungal infection that gets in the branches, works its way down, and eventually kills the tree. You can see these lesions here. This is what it does to the tree. Now, we've had several of our trees monolith to try to extend their lifespan. It does mean we have quite a bit of ash firewood at the moment, which is actually really sad because it means eventually there will not be many ash trees around. On the bright side, there are programs trying to propagate resistant trees through cuttings and also to breed new resistant saplings. Hopefully they'll have success so we can have large ash trees all across our countryside again someday. Here on our land in the north of England, we planted thousands of native broadleaf trees to try to fill the ecological niche left by our lost ash trees. These things are only young. Give them time. We started this experiment with 2 piles of firewood that were the same size. By the time it took us to get that green ash going, we burnt our entire pile of dry ash firewood. That means we could have cooked our dinner, got warm, kicked back with a brew, long before that green ash finally got going. So if you are going to rely on green ash for your firewood, you're going to be cold, hungry, and in the dark for quite a while, but it is possible. Anyway, if you're enjoying this, do please press subscribe. We'd appreciate it. So, to answer our own question, do you have to dry your firewood? Sometimes the answer is no. But to get the best from your firewood, the answer is certainly yes. Ash wet or ash dry, king shall warm his slippers by. I like the poem, but ash dry is certainly better than ash wet. Thank you for watching.